Hi, I'm Irene Holmes. Welcome to my stories, The Loretta Files Rosewood. Chapter 1, Loretta's New Home. Her name is Loretta, 72 years old, and let me tell you, she's seen more fraudulent deals and broken promises than a used car lot on payday. Loretta worked as a criminal investigator for over 30 years. She dedicated her entire life to pursuing criminals, uncovering lies, and collecting evidence. Loretta loved her job. She had a sharp, insightful mind, logical thinking, and a habit of trusting no one. After retiring, Loretta moved in with her daughter and her family. At first, it seemed like a good idea. She had a place to live, her grandchildren loved to listen to her stories, and there was always someone nearby. As the years went by, Loretta suddenly realized she was living in an overcrowded house with constant noise, endless demands, and no privacy. One day she said to herself, "Enough. Now it's my turn to live my life the way I want." Don't get her wrong. She loves her children and grandchildren. She raised them, fed them, and worked 2 jobs so they could get braces and go to college. And now her grandchildren are grown, and they don't need Loretta anymore. For months, Loretta dreamed of a place where she could breathe freely, a place where she could be herself. She spent hours researching, calling, visiting communities, and filling out endless applications. Finally, her determination paid off. Rosewood Gardens, a prestigious senior living community, accepted her. It wasn't easy. The waiting list was over 6 months. But Loretta was patient. She knew exactly what she wanted, so she found herself in this luxurious senior living community. Rosewood Gardens is a beautiful 3-story building in the center of a large park, with cozy 1-story cottages flanking the main building. Small terraces with wicker furniture and pots of beautiful, vibrant flowers. The complex seems straight out of a magazine, a combination of elegance and comfort. A spacious park with winding paths, flower beds, benches, and delicate fountains. Tall oak trees cast shade over the paths, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming roses. Loretta was given apartment number 369 on the 3rd floor of the main building. The apartment was bright and spacious. The living room had a large window and an exit to the balcony from which birdsong drifted. All the furniture was tastefully chosen: a cozy armchair by the window, a small table with a table lamp, and a sofa covered with cushions. The kitchen was compact yet modern, with beautiful cabinets, a gleaming electric stove, a tall, spacious refrigerator, and a small nook where she could enjoy her tea. The bedroom was neat and cozy, with a bed with soft linens and a large window overlooking the park. The bathroom was equipped with safety features, non-slip floors, grab bars, and a walk-in shower. Every detail in the apartment had been thoughtfully designed and spoke of care and attention for the elderly. The balcony will become my favorite place, Loretta thought. She imagined pouring herself a cup of coffee in the morning and watching the sun rise over the park. Loretta stretched sweetly and decided to take a nap. She lay down on the soft sofa and, as she drifted off, thought that after years of chasing criminals and solving mysteries, she had finally found a place that felt like home. She had found her paradise. But Loretta didn't yet know that Rosewood Gardens held surprises that would change her life forever. Chapter 2, Surprises at the Gardens Table. Loretta woke up a few hours later, feeling so cheerful that it almost scared her. The sun was setting. The scent of freshly cut grass drifted in from the park, and for the first time in years, she felt like a woman with a future, not just a past. She put on her best dress, added a touch of lipstick, a whisper of perfume, saved for special occasions, and looked in the mirror. "Not bad, Loretta," she said to herself. "Not bad at all." The cafe garden's table turned out to be spacious and bright. Huge windows, green plants hanging in elegant pots, and tables arranged so even walkers and wheelchairs could glide by without a bump. Soft chairs with armrests, menus printed in large letters, and not a trace of that nursing home smell. Someone here cared about dignity and details. Loretta smiled to herself. Getting into Rosewood Gardens hadn't been easy. She'd filled out forms, sent documents, called, reminded, waited. Harder to get in than a private school, she thought wryly. Settling at a table by the window, she adjusted the silverware, habit of an investigator, and let her gaze wander. For the first time in decades, she felt a rare sense of calm, the kind she hadn't known since childhood, before life turned into cases, marriage, divorce, and the endless chase of responsibility. She ordered roasted chicken with mashed potatoes, comfort food honest and simple, and leaned back to observe the local population. Who were these people she'd be sharing her golden years with? And then she saw him. Harold! Now, I know you don't know Harold, so let me paint the picture. Imagine a man who brings you flowers on Monday and drains your bank account by Friday. That's Harold, my ex-husband. Good Lord, I thought I was done with him 40 years ago, and yet there he was, tapping his cane on the floor, head held high as if he still ruled the world. The belly was gone, the hair also gone. But that smirk? Oh, still there. The same smug little smile that used to make me want to throw a gravy boat at his head. Time hadn't been kind to Harold, but once upon a time, he'd been the prize of the county. Broad shoulders, movie star grin, the kind of man every girl dreamed of marrying. Loretta had fallen for him in high school, married him young, and gave him 15 years of her life. 15 years of cooking, laundry, broken promises, and a husband whose eyes followed every skirt in town. She nearly laughed. Out of all the retirement homes in the state, he had to end up in hers. Apparently, karma had a sense of humor. She turned away and nearly choked on her water. 2 tables over sat a woman she recognized instantly. Thin gray hair tied in a defeated bun, a dress that had lost its battle with an iron decades ago, eyes dull and twitchy, searching for gossip like a bloodhound. Her old neighbor, the one who used to dig into Loretta's life and spread rumors like it was a full-time job. Worse, the one who had sided with Harold during the divorce, lied under oath, and nearly cost Loretta everything. Loretta straightened her shoulders, a cold little smile curling on her lips. Well, she thought, dinner just got a lot more interesting. And then, across the room, a third familiar face. A tall man in a fine jacket with snowy white teeth and hair to match. A former colleague, the one who had once tried to charm her and, when she refused, had turned vindictive, feeding false leads to her boss, trying to make her look incompetent. Loretta lifted her glass, took a slow sip, and let her gaze move from Harold to the neighbor to the colleague. Years had worn them all down, but the memories remained sharp. She smiled to herself. "Enjoy your dinner while you can," she whispered, "because this time the cards are in my hands, and I always play to win." Chapter 3. Old Faces, Old Wounds. After dinner, Loretta went up to her apartment and closed the door behind her with relief. Taking off her shoes, she poured herself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the balcony to get some fresh air. The evening park below shimmered with the lights of lanterns, and somewhere in the distance came the sound of laughter. She took a sip and allowed her thoughts to drift back to those she had met at dinner. Vivian. Vivian had been her best friend, or so Loretta thought. They went to church together, raised their children side by side, exchanged recipes, and gossiped like candies. But while smiling at Loretta, she gossiped about her to all the neighbors, making her look clumsy, a bad wife and mother. By the time Loretta realized it, the damage had already been done. That's the thing about betrayal. It hurts more when it comes from someone who knows your secrets. Today, the former neighbor saw Loretta first, but pretended she didn't. She sat hunched over the table, nodding like a bobblehead, smiling at someone. Yet her eyes kept sneaking back to Loretta, like to a shadow you can't shake off. Samuel, the former colleague, on the contrary, brightened when he saw Loretta. A wide smile, a wave of the hand. "Loretta, what a surprise," he said, as if he was truly glad to see an old friend. He was sure his tricks were long forgotten. He didn't even notice how the corners of Loretta's lips twitched with a mocking smile. Samuel had done everything to destroy Loretta's career. They once worked together on cases, and Loretta thought they were a team. Turned out all he ever did was set her up to get ahead. Lies, deals, betrayal. That was Samuel in a nutshell. And now he was here, waving at Loretta, while his eyes still darted around as if hiding cards up his sleeve. Harold noticed her last. At first, he was telling something to a woman nearby, laughing loudly, cracking his knuckles. He always did that when he wanted attention, then suddenly froze. Their eyes met. His face seemed to shrink, but he quickly put on a smile and began to turn his glass, pretending nothing had happened. "Old fox," thought Loretta, "but your hands are still shaking." Harold. Once he had been her whole world, confident, handsome, with a smile that disarmed. She fell for him the way only a young girl can fall in love. They married, dreamed of a home, a family, a long, happy life. But reality turned out different. Harold was one man in public and another at home. He didn't shout or hit. No, but his words could hurt more than any blow. He could make a cold joke that left the room silent. He could accidentally humiliate her in front of friends, and he could make her feel guilty even when it was clearly his fault. Loretta went back inside and took from the drawer an old leather notebook, her faithful companion from her investigator days. Back then, she wrote case notes in it. Now it would become her book of retribution. On the first page she wrote, "Case number 1, Harold," and just below it, "Target, Harold. Method, unknown for now. Time, soon." Then came case number 2, Vivian. Still loud, still vain, still craving attention. Case number 3, Samuel. Still cautious, still greedy, still thinks he's the smartest one in the room. Chapter 4, Loretta casts her nets. The nicest thing about old age is that no one expects you to rush anymore. You can do everything slowly, thoughtfully, like a chess player preparing a match. Loretta had already been living in Rosewood Garden for a week and was fully enjoying her freedom from children and grandchildren. She loved spending time on the balcony, sipping coffee or tea with lemon. From her height, she had a perfect view of the park and the neat one-story cottages with small terraces. Married couples lived there, as well as people who didn't like stairs or apartments. These beautiful doll-like houses surrounded the main 3-story building along the perimeter. In one of them lived Miss Betty, whom Loretta had met once at the cafe. Loretta decided to get to know Betty better. A loud, talkative, but surprisingly observant woman, Betty adored telling stories about the residents of the community and knew everything about everyone. One morning after breakfast, the two women sat on a bench in the park, and Betty was breathlessly sharing the latest gossip. Loretta, an experienced criminal investigator, skillfully asked questions, nodded, acted surprised, all while quietly steering the conversation toward Harold Thompson. "Can you imagine?" Betty said, loudly whispering. "Mr. Thompson is courting 3 ladies at the same time." "You don't say!" Loretta pretended to be shocked. "Who would have thought our place had such drama?" "What drama?" Betty snorted. "Everyone thinks he's rich, but I know the truth. His pension is barely enough to feed a cat." Loretta listened carefully, nodding, sometimes adding phrases like, "Oh, poor things. They must just want some attention." "Of course," Betty agreed. "Every 3rd woman here is looking for a romance so she doesn't feel old." After talking with Betty, Loretta knew one thing. Harold was still in good shape. That old charmer had managed to juggle 3 romances at once, with Grace, with Nora, and with Betty herself, and each of them was convinced that he loved only her. "Well, old man," Loretta thought, "time to shake your charismatic charm a little." She decided not to interfere directly. Why? It's much more interesting to let life put everything in its place. She only needed to give things a gentle push. The next day, Loretta invited the ladies for tea. Just tea with no special occasion. She said she wanted to get to know them better. The women gladly agreed. They didn't have much else to do anyway. Each of them came dressed up, Nora in a bright scarf and pink lipstick, Grace with pearl earrings and a fresh hairstyle, and Betty with her usual smirk and perfume you could smell from 10 feet away. They sat on the balcony, drank tea, nibbled cookies, and discussed community news, who got sick, who moved, who was secretly seeing the massage therapist. Loretta listened, nodded, laughed in the right moments, and gradually led the conversation toward Harold. No one would have guessed she already knew everything about him. "Oh, that Mr. Thompson," Grace sighed dreamily. "Such a gentleman, so charming. Imagine, he promised to take me on a cruise." "A cruise?" Nora repeated. "Strange. He told me he can't stand the sea." Betty bit her lip and stared into her cup. Loretta put on an innocent expression. "Really? He once told me he had the soul of a sailor. I wonder which one of us he isn't lying to." A short silence hung over the table. The women exchanged glances, but none of them showed it. The conversation quickly switched to other topics: new neighbors, the cafe's menu, the weather, but the atmosphere had already changed. Loretta saw clearly. A seed of doubt had been planted in each of them. Now she simply had to wait until it sprouted. Later, when the ladies left, Loretta stayed alone on the balcony. The sun was setting behind the trees. The wind gently rustled the leaves, and the scent of roses drifted from the park. The evening was perfect. "Old Harold," Loretta said with a smile, "if you promise 3 women the same thing, at least make sure they aren't sitting at the same table." Chapter 5. The Story He Chose Not to Tell. "Old Harold," Loretta said with a smile, "if you promise the same thing to 3 women, at least make sure they're not sitting at the same table." She said it aloud and quietly laughed. She was very pleased with this evening. She had managed to stir up confusion in the minds of Betty, Grace, and Nora. After all, they had no idea that Harold had privately sworn love to each of them and promised the moon and the stars. Now the ladies would be watching one another very closely. "An excellent evening," Loretta laughed again and stretched sweetly. She was a little tired of her noisy companions and decided to go rest. But she didn't know that all evening the ladies had not been alone on the balcony. Behind the thin balcony partition quietly sat Mr. Grayson, listening, a former newspaper man, a bit of a grumbler, but with a sharp mind and an ironic view of the world. Once he had written biting commentary for local papers, but after his wife's death, he stepped away from work. He wasn't eavesdropping on purpose. It was simply his professional habit. Not long ago, he had run a newspaper column called Whispers by the Window. Loretta had long returned to her room. Grayson heard her humming a popular tune, and the old writer kept staring at his laptop screen. On the screen blinked the headline that had seemed brilliant to him an hour earlier: Love Passions in Rosewood Garden, Seniors, Romance, Jealousy, and Revenge. The article was finished. Everything was in his signature style, sharp, sarcastic, full of hints that lived between the lines. Mr. Harold Thompson, heartbreaker and charmer flowers, dates, secret promises, deceived women, Loretta's revenge. But something kept him from pressing publish. He remembered hearing laughter that evening, soft, a bit husky, but alive. Loretta. She had laughed with the ladies, holding a cup of coffee, looking genuinely happy, not angry, not vengeful, just a woman finally breathing freely. He knew everything about her: her past life with Harold, her years of work, betrayals by people she trusted, and much more. He saw a kindred soul in Loretta, intelligent, observant, with a sharp sense of humor, yet so vulnerable. And for the first time in many years, he smiled and realized he liked this woman very much. He imagined Loretta discovering the article, her proud, calm face suddenly stiffening with hurt. No, he didn't want that. Not for her. Grayson sighed, erased the headline, and closed the laptop. Let Rosewood Garden live peacefully. And as for him, he decided it was time to buy a new notebook. Not for gossip, but for notes. Real human notes. Chapter 6. Tea in Harold's Garden. That morning, Miss Betty was working her magic in the kitchen. The smell of apple pie filled the entire floor. She carefully packed the pie into a basket. Can't go empty-handed to Mr. Thompson. Mr. Harold Thompson had decided that a bit of romance would brighten his dull evenings, so he invited Miss Betty for a cup of tea in his garden. He picked out his best tie and even placed a vase of flowers on the table, old but still fragrant, just like his compliments. When Betty appeared in a light blue dress, Harold nearly spilled his tea. To him, she looked like a breath of spring in his autumn days. He leaned forward, lowered his voice to a velvet whisper, and said, "You know, Betty, all these years I thought my evenings were hopelessly gray until I saw your smile. Even my blood pressure pills seem sweeter now." "Oh, Mr. Thompson," sighed Betty, lowering her lashes, "you speak as if a poet lives inside you." "No, my dear," Harold smiled. "Inside me lives a man who has learned how to dream again." Meanwhile, Miss Nora spotted Betty hurrying toward Harold's house with a pie and narrowed her eyes. "A pie? For whom, I wonder?" Curiosity won. Nora grabbed Miss Grace. "Just for a little walk." But their walk ended by the hedge, with a perfect view of the garden table. "He gave her a rose," hissed Nora. "And she's smiling," added Grace, nearly sneezing from the lilac scent. Then, inspired by his success, Harold announced, "You, Miss Betty, are the only one who truly understands me." "The only one?" thundered a voice from the bushes as the two innocent walkers tumbled into view. "The only one," repeated Miss Grace, bursting from the shrubs like a popped champagne cork. "You old liar!" Miss Nora followed, tangled in branches, lost her hat, and added between gasps, "Never thought I'd see something like this among decent people." Betty froze with her teacup in hand. Her cheeks flamed red like the apples in her pie, and she nearly squeaked, "Miss Grace? Miss Nora? What are you doing here?" "We," snapped Nora. "What are you doing here with our Harold?" "Your Harold," huffed Grace. "Since when is he yours?" "Ladies, ladies, please," murmured Harold, paling and clutching his cane. "No reason to be upset." But before he could finish, Miss Nora swung her purse, whack, right across Harold's ear. His hearing aid flew out, made a graceful arc, and landed directly in the teacup. A crowd of neighbors, drawn by the noise, gathered by the fence. Someone was already filming on their phone. Someone else was taking bets on who would cry first. And among the onlookers, with a soft smile and a glass of lemonade, stood Loretta. She watched her ex-husband dart between the ladies, wiping tea off his chin and desperately trying to reclaim at least a shred of dignity. Quietly, Mr. Grayson appeared beside her. "Looks like the evening's about to get interesting," he murmured. Loretta turned slightly and replied, "Oh, Mr. Grayson, you have no idea how interesting." Chapter 7. The Fall of Mr. Thompson. The next morning at the Gardens Table Cafe, the place was buzzing. The community newspaper, the Rosewood Weekly, hadn't come out yet, but news was spreading faster than Wi-Fi. Miss Nora, her wrist wrapped in dramatic layers of bandages from the overly enthusiastic swing of her handbag, was telling everyone how lightning struck Harold's heart right over a cup of tea. Miss Grace added clarifications, and Miss Betty, blushing, tried her best to pretend she remembered nothing at all. Harold himself showed up later, wearing sunglasses, cotton in one ear, and a wounded sense of dignity. But the moment he passed a few tables, whispers floated behind him. "There he is, the poet of love." Oh yes. Miss Nora's handbag was the first to review his poetry. Someone giggled, someone coughed into their cup, and Harold understood. He was no longer a man. He was a legend, a comical one. Loretta watched it all from her table by the window. Her coffee had gone cold, but she was smiling. That day, Harold didn't linger in the cafe. He returned to his apartment, took off his tie, looked at his reflection, and for the first time in many years felt not age, not fatigue, but loneliness. The day finally came to an end. Rosewood Garden was wrapped in the soft glow of lamplight. Some windows were glowing, leaves rustled in the park. Loretta sat at her writing desk. Beside her, a cup of coffee with a thin ribbon of steam curling upward. In front of her, a leather notebook with neatly written lines. There were only 3 names on the first page. The first, Harold Thompson. Loretta picked up a pen, the same one she once used to make notes on cases, and she drew a clear, confident line through his name. Then she closed the notebook, tapped the cover gently with her fingers, and quietly said, "One less ghost from the past." She leaned back in her chair and looked out the window. The moon hung above the park. The air was warm and clear. "Well then," Loretta whispered, "tomorrow I'll start a new page, not for revenge, but for life itself."